Well, Charles, that's the old standby. No exploding robots in that one.
Well, we'll have to do that kind of stuff intermittently, otherwise people get too used to the extravaganza.
Well, it's like in the movie The Incredibles, you know, where they say if everybody is special, then nobody is. So
Right.
we got to keep some of the special ones in reserve for special occasions. But pretty eventful week. We had the Mark Meadows hearing. I think some people, when it was billed as a whistleblower hearing, had some kind of different expectation. But of course, Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan explained to the seemingly some of the members of Congress who are inept that the whistleblower law that allows them to report these tax crimes to the IRS was what qualified them as whistleblowers, right?
Right, and we're going to cover that in some considerable depth. My view, just to preview it, is that they did yeoman's work, and actually behind the scenes they have made enormous progress, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Well, I don't have too much to say. I've noticed that sometimes I yap a lot at the beginning of these things, and I don't want to cut into your time. I think I've said this, that there's been an uproar over Patreon.com basically banning Milo Yiannopoulos and also Sargon of Akkad, which is a nickname for a British blogger who was banned for something that he said on another show on YouTube that wasn't even on Patreon. So although I object to what the guy said, I object even more to the notion that we have these companies that are going to judge you based on things you do outside of the context of doing business with them, and just make some judgment over something you say or do in your life that costs you your business. I think it's dangerous, even if we dislike, hate speech and what this guy said or whatever. I think that hate speech needs to be protected by freedom of speech as well. It's a sticky problem, but I hope that people will still go to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. We've got a new sponsorship opportunity available. People can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth, but actually Subscribestar has been exploding. All the people getting kicked off of Patreon are going there, and now PayPal has pulled out of supporting Subscribestar. So we're a little bit waiting for this week for Subscribestar to respond to that. But it's a troubling trend where Laura Loomer gets kicked off of Twitter. Larry Klayman was with me last night saying that YouTube has apparently done this big purge of fake accounts. I expected to lose some subscribers on ours because we've seen that tactic where people have purchased fake YouTube accounts and subscribed to the channel so they can, downvote videos and do all kinds of things to mess with the subscribership. But we've stayed strong at over 76,000 subscribers. Larry Klayman's Freedom Watch channel lost over 30,000. That sounds fishy to me, Charles. I don't think 30,000 fake subscribers were on Larry's channel.
Very odd, very odd.
Yeah. But we could get right into the presentation if you like.
Sure, well, hats off to the art department again.
Right. Thank you very much. I forgot we want to talk about the poster. There are some subtle details in today's image, Charles.
Well, take us through them, Maestro.
Well, of course, these two are quite obvious. It's Hillary and Bill. Now, this copy here from this is from the original poster, so I just left it. I'm not, of all the Shakespeare plays, not terribly familiar with The Taming of the Shrew, and I definitely never saw this movie, but I don't think this would fly today.
It's not in Me Too movement land, I don't think so.
Not Me Too friendly, but I should have changed it to a motion picture for every man who ever bit a woman and told her to put ice on it, which takes in not a lot of people, but certainly this guy.
Right.
And then down here towards the bottom, because we wanted to call it the shaming of the Shrews, we wanted to have more than just one shrew. So I don't know if boozy, rummy Robert Mueller qualifies as a shrew, he's definitely pulling out all the stops on his thug tactics. But we've got, of course, the unhinged Nancy Pelosi sort of doing something here. I don't know if she's like stifling a guy or something. And then we've got Chelsea, the PhD in diarrhea, getting ready to stab somebody.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out here actually that really this poster and the idea of using this movie is a reaction to all those towards the end of the 2016 presidential campaign and afterwards when Trump won, who were embracing their inner nasty. You know, everyone was saying, you know, I'm nasty, real women are nasty, people are nasty.
Nasty woman, right.
And actually nasty people. And, you know, one of the things that you do see that, at least I view in many of these hard, never Trump, anti-Trump types is just this, they're drip with nastiness. And I'm sorry, I don't view nastiness as a virtue. And I really think, you know, life, if we're going to get into this a little bit, is nasty, brutish, and short. And so to embrace that is really kind of silly, and to set up a whole political machine where you encourage people to be nasty to one another. And there's an element of nastiness that can come out of Trump as well, and vulgarity, and, you know, I'm not for that. But really, I think on the other side of the aisle, there's a lot more of this nastiness at the same time by people who believe they're virtue signaling. And it's just, it's a difficult phenomenon. I think in time, historians and others will look back on this period, 1988 to the present, maybe we enter a new image.
The nasties?
Well, just, a strange period, you know, where this is the richest country on earth. We've got so many things going for us, but we've got a large number of people who just want to be nasty.
I just thought of something.
What?
Well, perhaps for the end of the year, we could hand out awards. We could have an awards ceremony and have them be the nasties.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
One more little technical item I just want to cover briefly, Charles, for our generous sponsors who are watching on patreon.com. There's a bunch of different technologies that come together for all of this stuff to work, and when those companies change their technologies, I don't always know, but some people have been reporting no sound when they're watching on Patreon, and I did notice that there's this new default thing that says click to unmute. So I guess it starts out muted and you have to actually click this if you're watching on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You want to click this click to unmute button in order to get the sound when you start watching the show.
Very good.
Yeah, so people can click that. But why don't we?
Yeah, just one final word. I think this idea that you've come up with the screensaver, I hope people are looking into that, using it, and this idea of also ultimately doing a coffee table book. We're creating really 2 of these a week.
Yeah.
So, and there's a backstory behind every single one of these shows. So we already have more than enough potential copy and material to put into quite, a thick coffee table book. So I would like to do that, and I've put a request into my book agent to let me know whether that's a project she wants to do or doesn't want to do. And if she wants to do it, we'll do it. If she doesn't want to do it, we'll do it independently. But we're going to do it.
I like that. We're going to do it one way or the other. And thank you for mentioning a screensaver, Charles. That's a free gift to sponsors of $10 a month or more on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And there are a couple people who have sent some sponsorship funds to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth, who I owe a screensaver to. I'll be emailing those later today, but getting universally positive reviews of the Sunday with Charles screensaver.
Way to go. Glad you're doing it.
And with that, we can go right to the slides.
Sure. So today we're going to be bouncing around on a bunch of different topics, but one of the common themes that we've been trying to nail down here is to go broader than the Clinton Foundation fraud, to explain that one of my focuses has been on why globalism, unregulated globalism, sucks. And
that's
why,
a bumper sticker.
and why it seems to make so much sense to leaders of smaller countries, particularly countries in Scandinavia and Ireland and England and France and elsewhere. These countries, the leaders of those countries, love the idea of unregulated globalism because it allows them to go from running their country into a much bigger sandbox flying all over the world with no rules whatsoever. And it's rife with opportunity, potential opportunities for corruption and influence peddling, et cetera. So the Clinton Foundation and a few charities like it are simply mechanisms that these leaders use to trade money for influence. And so we really tried to build domain excellence, jumping all over the idea of understanding the Clinton Foundation and explaining it to everybody here, and the developments of the investigations into the Clinton Foundations on a bi-weekly basis. But the real tale we're going to be telling in time is not going to be limited simply to the Clinton Foundation, but rather to why unregulated globalism sucks, why patriotic nationalism within restraints makes a lot of sense, particularly if you're talking about nationalism in a country like the United States, which is a diverse country. We are no longer a country of white Anglo-Saxon refugees from England. I mean, we are a country that embraces multiple nationalities. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses, all sorts of diverse opinions, except on the Ivy League campuses. This is an experiment that has been going on now for over 200 years, which really should continue under the ambit of our Constitution. The notion we should tear this up and just follow Pied Pipers like Al Gore and Barack Obama and Bill Clinton around the world, preaching things that nobody can check from projects that nobody understands.
Well, people have checked it and actually refuted some of what Al Gore is saying. I don't mean to interrupt, Charles, but one of our commenters here says, for flat earthers, globalism should be discism.
That's very good.
A little schism in the globalism.
That's very good. So before we get into the body of the presentation, if we just go to the next slide, I think many of you know that my ex-wife has been battling cancer, and sadly she died yesterday. And I wanted to just take a few seconds to try to remember her and let you in on why I found her so special and why she did so many good things. She was she was born on October 3rd, 1956, and she died, as I said, yesterday. If we hit on this link here, Jason, this is a very touching tribute. We're not going to play it, that Memorial Sloan Kettering did for her. She did with them. And it really is a tribute to her, but also a tribute to Memorial Sloan Kettering, who really extended her life. She was given 5 years to live in June of 2012. And they extended her life by a year and a half. And it's quite a touching tribute that people can read at their leisure. So we go back into the slide. She was the eldest of 6 kids. At a very early age, she loved to dance. She was perhaps the smartest person I've ever met. And she got into Harvard,
Yeah.
after her junior year of high school. Spent 1 year there and felt she had to take time off, so she went and danced professionally in New York City. Ultimately, she graduated. I met her there in her senior year. I was, my typical self, hopeless, and I'd spent the summer of 1979 in England, and 78 is when I met her, in England in a summer job, and I was flying standby and got delayed coming back. So I got to the Harvard campus for my first day of class at like 2 o'clock in the morning, the day of the class, with no clean clothes. And the cleanest thing I had was a Yale crew shirt, which is, a white shirt.
Perfect for the first day
at Harvard, right? So I put this thing on without thinking, like stumbling out of bed, and I go through the checkout line, and this beautiful young lady says, "So, a traitor, huh?" And I looked at her, and I don't know how I pulled this out of my head, but I looked at her and I said, "Young lady, I went to Yale to get an education. I've come to Harvard to learn my trade." It's like that.
And that was Clarissa you were speaking to?
Yeah.
And how did she like that answer? Yes, she liked it.
Evidently she liked. Anyway, so I convinced her to go. She was going to try to go back into the art world. I convinced her to get an MBA at Columbia. She went on to, got a great job at Solomon Brothers and then at Morgan Stanley. She was my wife for 21 years. She then decided to go back to school and become a teacher, so she got an MA at Fordham. She's always been, she was always somebody who loved to learn. She's a mother of 2 special children. And, excuse me. And a renowned teacher. She taught at Stuyvesant economics, and that was really something. And then last, she was a philanthropist. So, excuse me.
Take your time, Charles.
She and we did things quietly to help people in a meaningful way. And so when you see the Clintons, it's just so painful to see what they've done to the good name of philanthropy. Thanks. So her favorite poem was this one, Believe in Orion. And I leave that up here on the screen. If you can hit the Forbes link.
Yep.
That's a story you can read about her back in 2010. It tells a lot about her life before she fell ill. So with that, let's try to get into the balance of the presentation.
Yeah.
She had a hell of a life.
Yeah. I think everybody is very sorry to hear this news, Charles.
Thank you. Godspeed, Clarissa. Godspeed. So if we could move
Yeah.
To the balance of the presentation. As we've said before, this is a different effort. This is not simply trying to get the cost down in a traditional, cable TV show or a print thing or a magazine or whatever. This is a cooperative effort. And there are a lot of people out there. You have the 76,600 subscribers. I think there are lurkers who don't subscribe. There are lots of people who know about what you're doing, what we're doing together. And I think we're starting to have an impact. I think that people do watch this show. I know I get a lot of emails and contacts on Twitter and elsewhere.
Charles, actually, there's something that came to my attention that caused me to think that as well. I mean, we don't know for sure, but I did notice yesterday on the front page of Drudge Report, which I frequently look at, there was a really interesting graphic there, which looked like it may have been inspired by some of the graphics that we put together. It was Robert Mueller. I mean, this is very uncharacteristic of Drudge to have a sort of I consider these things that I do, these photo collages, to be political cartoons. I can't really draw that well, but I'm pretty good with Photoshop, so I put together these. I had nothing to do with this, but it looks like it's in the same kind of vein of something that we would do, Robert Mueller photoshopped with the, nice image of the car and the motion blur on the background thing. So perhaps we are having more of a reach than I realized.
That echoes what, Romney with the dog on top of the car?
Did that happen to Mitt Romney with a dog on top of
Yeah,
his
he got castigated because he was going with his family and he put like a dog container with a dog in it on top of a car.
That's crazy.
I know.
It seems like a Chevy Chase movie.
Yeah, he got a fair amount of grief for that. But anyway, what we try to do in this set of presentations here is to try to motivate and interest people we don't even really know, people out there in the crowd, to do what I have done and what you've done, Jason, which is until August of 2007, I kept my pie hole shut. I mean, I was just a dude. I was interested in, actually, for 2002 to 2007, if you ask me, what did I spend most of my time doing other than being with my kids, it was trying to trace my family origins back to before 1066 and earlier.
I thought it was an anthropological study happening inside a Starbucks.
Yeah, also some of that. But so this is an effort to try to encourage people who have an interest in making a difference to pick a topic, get smart on it, try to get smarter than the average bear, share your findings with the wider public, and then encourage the wider public to come along and rise up, as we're trying to do now, and put the Clinton Foundation, the people behind the Clinton Foundation, in prison where they belong, to set an example so that this kind of stuff does not happen again, particularly involving former presidents and their families and aspiring presidents. So this is really a testament, this show, to the fact that, you know, anybody, frankly, who puts a lot of time and energy into something can make a difference. And thank you to you and the crowd for encouraging this and for supporting the finances of this so that Jason can actually eat and get this stuff done. What we try to do in each of these presentations is not simply to say, you know, we have the secret sauce and we're not going to tell you how to cook the meal. No, we try to give you the links to the supporting information, the analysis, to the experts who are out there, so that you can see what we see. And then once you see what we see, you can share our findings. And a lot of you are doing that, and thank you for that. My Twitter account is rising, and I see a lot of activity, and I actually see what our work mentioned, you know, in articles and elsewhere, and even on other shows, people are talking about it finally. So one thing that Jason has done to make this rich tableau easier for people to follow is the playlist.
Yes.
Which is not that.
No, but there we go.
But is
got the playlist there.
But is this?
Yep.
And there are now already 126 videos up. There will be, this is our 127th video. The first 20 or so were relatively short, but I think the balance average over 2 hours, pushing up to maybe 2.5 hours. Every single one of the 107 shows, let's call them, has a slideshow attached, all of which are free to you to look at. You can pull them down. And we were pitching this to the super elite, not the supposed elites that follow Hillary Clinton and support Hillary Clinton and the Clinton family and their high lifestyles. We're pitching this to people who are willing, as you are, to devote time during a Sunday afternoon to considering this complex topic. We're trying to pitch it to you imagining that you're in the FBI or you're in government agencies around the world, anxious to reform charities and to bring charity regulation into the 21st century. We try to do it with a bit of humor when appropriate, and we try to make it pleasant for people to listen to, but there's a whole suite of information here, and shame on anybody who might dare say that there are no details. Yeah. Because anyone who would say there are no details available in these supposed unfounded allegations, I had the...
They can run for Congress, apparently.
Exactly.
As a Democrat.
Exactly. So, I'm aware that the Clinton Foundation, I've had multiple reports, is sending letters around to mainstream media saying that Charles Ortel has been spreading unfounded, demonstrably false allegations about the Clinton Foundation for years. And so in one interaction with Eric Wemple of the Washington Post, I said, dude, I mean, just name one. Name one unfounded allegation, you know, because you can't come up with even one.
When I read that article, I thought it was a little bit less even-handed than you thought it was. I mean, you know, we do have someone in the comments asking if you'll discuss your interactions with the mainstream press. I've made no secret of the fact that there were a lot of people contacting you, sort of like, have you heard anything from Robert Mueller yet, Charles?
Right. Yeah. Mainstream interest in the foundation is virtually non-existent. Mainstream interest in whether I went over to London to meet with Julian Assange is very high. And so I have spoken to virtually every single outlet except CBS. I guess they're too busy cleaning up after Munvies. But every other.
Literally or figuratively?
Yeah, both. Leave it, let that one alone, you know, both. You got to use that, what is that, Stanley Steamer or whatever, you take care of that. But anyway.
Linda Tripp will deal with all the dry cleaning.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. But anyway, so Yeah, the mainstream press has yet to pick up on the Clinton Foundation details, but I think that's set to change, actually, for reasons that we're going to go through in a second. So if we could go back through to the, if we maybe could go to the first slide, yeah. This is characteristic. If we hit this first link, this is the Washington Post's reaction to, I thought, a strong performance by particularly Tom Fitton and then Larry Doyle, and is it not going through?
I have a subscription here to the Washington Compost, but yeah, it's not. Give me 1 second. We'll
Sure. There was the hearing. It was last Thursday. It was after our most recent show, which was on a Wednesday. And Larry Doyle and John Moynihan, who likes to actually be called by his initials YT, Moynihan, and Tom Fitton, they all did a very good job, I thought, trying to get through the very thick skulls of the few Democrats who bothered to show up and ask idiotic questions. What they were really doing is, at least Doyle and Moynihan were doing, was laying down the marker that 6,000 pages of evidence had been transmitted to multiple places inside the federal government, as well as to, is it just not picking up the whole thing?
It's not that, it's that the Washington, I'm on it here. It's been a series of missteps that are making this more complicated than it should be. I apologize.
That's all right. So Doyle and Moynihan have been successful getting 6,000 pages of incredibly damning information before a lot of people. And here's this idiotic article by Dana Milbank trying to claim that, how stupid we are, anybody who wants to say anything about Hillary Clinton's emails, how that's a stupid topic. And we're going to show you today why it isn't stupid. And we're going to show you why this guy, Dana Milbank, is an idiot. And frankly, the editors of the Washington Post are equally stupid, because they have, back in 1972 through 4, the Washington Post and the New York Times actually covered themselves in glory in exposing Nixon and then causing Nixon to resign. This time, in 2016 through really 15 through the present, the Washington Post is just stuck, in the sub-basement of the swamp. I mean, it's been totally, the people there have just lost sight of some of the biggest scandals that have ever been perpetrated in the name of a U.S. president are going to get exposed once these emails come to light.
Speaking of thick-headed morons, the former resident of that couch also produced a video maligning the testimony of Mr. Moynihan and Mr. Doyle.
Really?
Undermining and saying that it wasn't done well, and had he run it, he would have called in the various witnesses he's spent the past year intimidating.
Right, right. But if we go back into the slide, the reality is, I mentioned that Tom Fitton, he got this, we can hit that link. He did a good job both at the hearing and then following the hearing. Here's just a link to his testimony for people to listen to at their leisure in case you missed the hearing. And if we go back into the link, to the slide rather, he also then went on, I think, Fox and Friends, calling the Clinton Foundation an influence factory, which is exactly what it is. And it's not simply the Clinton Foundation, as we've told people before, it's the many charities around the Clinton Foundation that are all influence factories. That's all they are. And the people who don't want to complain about it being an influence factory tend to be people who've used it as an influence factory. Because there are actually many people in the mainstream media who participated in the Clinton Global Initiative, were featured in it, got special interviews of the Clinton family, like to remain on the good side of the Clinton family. Some of them have even, I think George Stephanopoulos contributed to the Clinton Global Initiative personally.
He's a schmuck.
He is a total schmuck. Another rogue scholar.
See, I knew I didn't trust him. And then that whole interview that he did with Michael Cohen seemed like they were both reading from the same script.
Right.
There was one moment where he was literally prompting Cohen.
Exactly.
He's like, do you feel like you got your freedom back? And he's like, I feel like I got my freedom.
That's right.
Dude, what is this, the Jedi mind trick?
Yeah, are you well taken care of? Yes, I'm well taken care of.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Right. So this, I want to draw attention to, this is a new site that I think has some interesting, it's got a funny name, Quad Verum. It's more citizen journalism. But this has got, this person, this is that guy Rex, who used to be called Imperator Rex.
Oh, yeah.
Same guy, I think.
So that's
or person.
always been a good Twitter. Oh, yeah, by Rex.
And this person is very smart, and I think understands that what the whistleblowers may have been trying to do here was to get Congress to subpoena the 6,000 documents so they could be turned into the public domain. That's what they're trying to, I think.
Why? Because if they just hand them over to the committee, they get buried?
No. The issue is that I believe the way this kind of stuff works is that when you file a complaint, normally the complaint is supposed to be adjudicated in private. But here was a case where it looked like the IRS was not going to take up a complaint that they should have taken up, and the whistleblowers were not going to have that. So they complained to Congress. Congress wants to study it. And I think once these 6,000, it's really pages, not documents, get into the hands of Congress, Congress will have no choice but to leak that information, to print that information, put it in the public domain, particularly when they appreciate the substance of what's in these 6,000 pages.
This was one of the most interesting moments of the testimony where Meadows, there's an exchange between John Moynihan and Mark Meadows where Moynihan basically told him, I don't think you guys are going to do anything and we don't want to give you this evidence. I presumed that was because he didn't trust the Democrats in the committee and thought they would somehow screw up. Let's just clarify, because I think a lot of people still don't realize what it is that these guys were doing. They have an analytics company that is normally hired by corporations and private investigators and law firms and stuff to investigate financial crime. And in this particular case, they've been investigating the Clinton Foundation for many years. They've assembled all this evidence in these 6,000 pages, and they're using the whistleblower laws to communicate with the IRS to expose this fraud in the hope that the IRS will enforce the law, collect the money from the Clinton Foundation, and then the whistleblower law provides for a reward to MDA Analytics. And they were very clear in that hearing that this is their business. They're doing this not because they're Democrats or Republicans, but because they want to expose the fraud and get the money for all the work they've done.
Well, so the issue with that is that the whistleblower law was set up in a bipartisan way, fully recognizing that the administration, the existing system in justice in the IRS and elsewhere, doesn't have enough people in it to catch all of the crimes. There are 325 million people in the United States of America. Let's say there are 175 million people who could be committing crimes, and there aren't that many people in the justice system. So this is in general terms, this is an approach which encourages members of the public to go out and spot crimes and bring them to the attention of appropriate organs of our government, and come forward with the evidence and encourage them to actually do something about it. In the case of the IRS, in order to go after you criminally, you need to also convince the Department of Justice to do something. And here, the Department of Justice remains the problem. Even under supposed Trump control and supposedly Republican Party influence, it is the Department of Justice that is defying Tom Fitton's many requests, valid requests for information even now. Only last week, the Department of Justice was supposed to come forward and comply with a court order, the Department of Justice and the FBI, and they refused to do it. They just let the deadline come and go under a theory like, what are you going to do about it? We're the Department of Justice. So this is an important moment. People at the Washington Compost and New York Times like to see this all as, the resistance is valid in this case because it's against a Republican Trump or a usurper, and forget about the precedent this sets, that suddenly the Department of Justice doesn't have to play by the rules anymore. That's a very dangerous precedent for the Department of Justice to have in its arsenal for that presidency which may come along where there's an even more arguably unscrupulous president than, let's say, President Obama or George W. Bush, or if you want to lump Trump in there, Donald Trump as well. So this is a very dangerous precedent, and it cannot be let stand the way it is.
People in the comments, Charles, are saying that they want to see Sidney Powell be nominated as Attorney General rather than William Barr.
Sidney Powell's great. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
So if we hit, this is something that happened today, I guess, or in the last little while. This morning, we just discovered that Mueller apparently, Mueller may have destroyed messages that were on Peter Strzok's phone, his iPhone. But somehow the Office of Inspector General in Justice recovered these 19,000 new texts. I mean, the double standard here, that you're going to have this guy Mueller, who should never have been, if we were going to have a special counsel, it should not have been Mueller. Yeah. And the whole process of, how did Mueller get selected is something that needs to be investigated. Who else was considered? How long did this take? How was he vetted? Who vouched for him? Who pushed for him?
I thought it was Rat Rodenstein.
Again, the whole, the timeline on that needs to be very carefully thought through, in the rearview mirror. But the notion that in a case that basically involves hundreds of thousands of centrally imported missing Hillary Clinton emails, right, is really a core issue, at issue here in this whole Mueller investigation, which I believe is an obstruction. The investigation is an obstruction into the required investigation into Clinton, Obama, and for that matter, Bush corruption, globalist corruption, that began perhaps as early as 1989, maybe even before that, under Reagan. The fact that you would have here a revelation that 19,000 text messages were destroyed under possibly by the Mueller team, at the same time that they're going around persecuting Papadopoulos and Corsi and sending FBI agents to meet me, and is just so outrageous. You cannot have, the stuff that might hurt us, we're going to destroy that. But we're going to take Jerry Corsi and we're going to put him into a room, somebody who was volunteering for 40 hours or 60 hours or whatever it is, ask him to rack his brain, try to use all these intimidation tactics on him to try to remember precisely what's in his emails and text messages. But on the other hand, Strzok can just go ahead and Page can destroy all of theirs. For that alone, Mueller should be disbarred, he should be investigated, he should be prosecuted, and he's the one who should go to prison for the rest of his life, and all of his assets should be seized for a victims fund.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely, Charles. And listen, not to speak negatively, but I think that first meeting with the FBI was them sizing you up to try to figure out what they're going to do. I think they were nervous about what might have come out at that whistleblower meeting. I think they know that you have tons of evidence and have been presenting tons of evidence. We see this coordinated smear campaign where they're sending out letters saying that you've got fake information. We see these so-called journalists with the Washington Compost and the Wall Street cage liner. and that guy in 2018, in December of 2018, is mocking the notion of investigating Hillary Clinton's emails. Why do we think it's okay that someone gets subpoenaed by Congress and destroys the evidence? How can you say that that's something you shouldn't talk about or look at?
And we're going to spend some time today on some new details to just show you how outrageous their behavior has been. This is something that I just noticed this morning, Jason. I don't know if you even saw it yet, but this is
the letter.
The letter from Robin Gritz that she got Sarah Carter to publish, and it's very lengthy. We're not going to try to read it or even summarize it now, but it basically calls out Mueller and the tactics that were used to an attempt to destroy General Michael Flynn.
I'm glad to see Robin writing that, because when I first met her, she said she had worked with Mueller and he was an okay guy, and I was like, are you kidding? And we did a few episodes where, hopefully we've helped to open her eyes to some of that stuff. I am firmly convinced that part of the process of being in the FBI, you wouldn't do that if you weren't feeling like the FBI was a good and justice-minded organization. So I think there's an indoctrination and then a de-indoctrination that Robin is going through.
Exactly. Exactly. So this brought to mind, actually, I had had this up before, and I talked to you, Jason, this morning about it. If we get back to the slide for a second. People give Thomas Jefferson a hard time, but this is something he wrote in 1782 as part of an answer to, this is something different. Well, we'll cover this one quickly. There is some mystery. On Friday, there was a portion of the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., a whole floor was cordoned off. And there's some secret battle going on between Mueller and some witness, and we don't yet know what this is all about. The mainstream press is breathlessly speculating maybe Mueller has already subpoenaed Trump, which would be a monumental step if that had been tried, because of course Trump would reject it. And then
He would tweet about it. There's no way.
I don't know. I don't know what would happen. But anyway, there's some mysterious thing going on, and my take on Mueller is that he is not. I mean, he had he wanted to go down a path of trying to justify that he was being even-handed, there is no way he would have selected his angry staff. There's just no way. He would have put a former lawyer who defended the Clinton Foundation in a prominent position, and this guy Weitzman.
What about Jeannie Reed?
Let's talk about Jeannie Reed, and then also there's just no way he would have done this. So this gentleman, in quotes, went off the rails a long time ago, and clearly must be trying to protect something. And then one thinks, well, what could he be trying to protect? Probably things that happened under his watch as FBI director from September 4th, 2001 to September 4th, 2013, and then subsequently under the watch of his close friend and successor, James Comey. So, I mean, the suspicions, you don't have to be a crime expert, you don't have to have read as many mystery novels as I've read, to look at this and say, hey, wait a minute, you know, the people who are in charge of this Russian collusion, delusion, persecution have a lot to lose here, and could be going as aggressively down the path that they're going to protect their own interest and to obstruct a real investigation into corruption at the highest levels of our country involving multiple presidents. So who predicted all this? Back in 1782, now for those who don't remember your history, the United States of America only came together under a constitution in 1789. From 1782 to 1789, we were under Articles of Confederation, a governance system much like the European Union, where there's no central authority, and we see how well that's working in Europe. It didn't work well in the United States. In this time frame, Thomas Jefferson, it fell to him to answer a questionnaire from France about the state of Virginia, which was then a very large colony. Virginia's borders, in theory, stretched all the way west, and so it was, you know, a gigantic place and a rich colony. And these words are just so prophetic. A single zealot may commence persecutor, and better men be his victims. To me, that describes Robert Mueller to a T. A single zealot may commence persecutor, and better men be his victims. Either Mueller, or maybe behind Mueller it's Obama, or behind Mueller it's, you know, the Clintons. Who knows? Our rulers will become corrupt, our people careless. This is 1782. He's thinking ahead. They will forget themselves, but in the sole faculty of making money, and will never think of uniting to effect a due respect for their rights. That defines the present. The shackles, therefore, which shall not be knocked off at the conclusion of this war, will remain on us long, will be made heavier and heavier, till our rights shall revive or expire in a convulsion. Now, I've used this language in a piece I wrote in 2011, November, I think 1st, 2011, about business stuff. But that's, I think, what we're in around the world. We're in a convulsion. You see it in France, you see it across this country, you're seeing it in country after country. This unregulated globalism sucks. It does not work for the masses. It does not work for the people who want to go to work every day and have a steady job and a safe retirement. It just doesn't work. and the people on the inside are happy to crush the masses, basically, for their personal benefit. And the only way to resist this is to have strong nations that follow the dictates of their individual national laws and administer them objectively. So we're at a real time of testing here, and it's been a treat to share these observations with you on a bi-weekly basis as we watch the course of this convulsion. How will it end? Is it going to end in a revival of our rights or an obliteration of them? And I think that those are the stakes.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we go to the next page.
I think that, Charles, it's also interesting to see how, the various bodies involved with this are responding to the things that you and I have put out into the public domain.
So this is in the quiet of last week, Hillary Clinton's lawyers responded to a request for more visibility into how the private email system was set up. This is something that Tom Fitton was able to force upon the Clinton team. So I put in red, this is how they like to answer questions. It's never like, we're going to give you, when I sat with the FBI, I was expected to give a complete answer, not just yes or no. They wanted to know the context or whatever. In her response, her written response to this valid question is, everything in red is a qualification of her answer. Everything, I have these general objections, I have the specific objections and these other objections, and I'm only going to answer it this way, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm only going to do that. And then it's basically the answer is, I don't know nothing. I don't know anything. I'm the Secretary of State going in, I'm going to take this most important role. My husband's running this foundation over here, my daughter's very much involved with it, or going to be. And I'm not going to take the trouble to know anything at all about this email server, yet I'm going to insist that all of my government business be transacted on this system. But I don't know what it is. I mean, how would I know? I mean,
how it works digitally?
I mean, it's just not credible. And when I was buying and selling companies, both as an agent first and then as a principal, you as a buyer, you like something, you're not going to say, your house is a slum and I want to buy it for $1. That's never going to work. You get to a valuation range, and then you have this argument why it's only worth $80 million, and somebody says, well, no, it's really worth $85 million, and you fight about it, and there are all these details, and then you get to a point where the details just, they don't freaking matter at a certain point. Are you going to pay $85 million or not? Are you going to pay, 80 or not? You just, I'll pay it, or I won't pay it. And we're way past that with this. I mean, this is a case where the Clintons, who had a corrupt foundation that was on the rocks by 2008 as she was negotiating to become Secretary of State, they had lost the ability to operate the biggest piece of it in Massachusetts on March 31st, 2008. They had never gotten a valid audit. They had all kinds of disclosures that were false and materially misleading. By all rights, it should have been shut down. And yet, somehow, the bright bulbs around the Obama administration say, the very person we're going to make Secretary of State is, the notoriously corrupt wife of the notoriously corrupt former president and his idiotic spawn, who's never done a decent day's work in her life, who's just milking all her notoriety for her personal benefit while virtue signaling as a charity expert. I mean, this answer on its face is ridiculous. I mean, I doubt that Paul Manafort, and Roger Stone and Jerry Corsi are able to answer their questions, whatever questions that Mueller is asking, in this way. And yet, the Clintons are given this deference, and frankly, her lawyer, David Kendall, and the law firm, Williams & Connolly, that law firm is centrally, in my opinion, not as a lawyer, centrally involved in creating the Clinton Foundation network of fraudulent charities starting October 23rd, 1997. That law firm, Williams & Connolly, the Clintons family owed them a tremendous amount of money for defending against all the various scandals through October 23rd, 1997. And I think a cogent argument could be made by prosecutors that Williams & Connolly, like in the same way that Mueller raided Cohen's office, or whoever raided Cohen's office, he's a lawyer. Yeah. I mean, you could pierce that attorney-client shield if the attorneys are part of a conspiracy to create a criminal enterprise and to obstruct the investigation into that criminal enterprise. You I believe, bust right through that.
But isn't that kind of a conflict? Like, how do you, let's say you suspect that, you violate this attorney-client privilege, and then it's like, oh, well, no, they weren't doing anything wrong. It's violated. What protects that attorney-client privilege?
I'm not a lawyer, and I think it's a question for
lawyers.
lawyers, but I mean, to me, I think that certainly the law firm Williams and Connolly stands at the very center and should be deemed a target-rich environment because of its continuing involvement, even now, trying to obstruct justice in these ridiculous answers that Hillary Clinton gave. Remember, this is supposedly one of the smartest lawyers in the world.
Hillary or Williams and Connolly?
Oh, Hillary, you know? How could you not know how this system was set up? I mean, just don't even try this type of absurd bullshit answer.
I mean, I think she was able to sell that to the general public because, you know, she's like a 70-year-old lady or whatever, and she's like, I don't know how computers work.
That's why I want to be president. I don't know. You know?
So Williams and Connolly has a pretty nice website, Charles. They say they're, the Washington Post says they're world-class lawyers. So
well, that's
got to be true.
That's got to be true.
I wonder what Truman the Tiger says about Williams and Connolly.
Yeah, they're great.
That's his preferred law firm.
So why are these emails important? Okay, if we go to the next page. Okay, I want to take a few minutes on this. What got me the appointment with the FBI was this email. Now, what I've done here is I've copied the important portions of this email, 2 emails, onto this slide. We can, of course, at some point share an actual physical copy of the email. But this was an email that I sent at 9:33 in the morning on the 25th of July.
Oh man, 9:33.
It says that the notion there are no emails dealing with reorganization of foundation from 16 November 2008, that's the MOU date, forward is fanciful. Assange likely has many of these. They will crucify Clinton and implicate Obama, and they need to emerge. That was the text, okay? But he hit the link, Jason, this link here, to the actual story. You know, and everyone say, well, why? Did Charles know Assange? I mean, why would Charles say something like this? You know, was he a close friend of Assange? No, I know how to read.
Yeah, but this
is a story that came out July 24th, the preceding day. Julian Assange, my next leak will ensure Hillary's arrest. I see this story and I say, maybe we should get these emails. Maybe somebody should go to Assange if he has this information. Look at this text. WikiLeaks founder said that WikiLeaks have obtained information that when released soon will guarantee a Hillary Clinton indictment. And it references a recent ITV interview, and if we keep going down the page, we can, it says, they've published the 30,000 emails that she turned over. Okay, now note that these just span the period June 30th, 2010 to August 12th, 2014. They do not cover the crucial period November 16th, 2008 through June 29th, 2010. All right, so these are not all the emails by definition. We go down here, it says, Assange hinted that the emails slated for publication contain additional information about the Clinton Foundation. Okay, I see this and I say, guys, I care about the Clinton Foundation. Fox should go to London and try to speak to Assange and get these freaking emails. This is why I said...
You're colluding with Fox's...
No, I'm not colluding. I'm doing basic, journalism 101. That's why I sent the email around. And not one of... Though my name has been in the Washington Post and NBC News, ABC, all these different people have been wondering about my potential... Not a single one of these mainstream sites has seen fit to show this link that we're showing you now. You can read it, it goes on and on and on. We go back into the email. I put some choice excerpts from that link, okay? But more recently, this is something that needs to go up here, this link here.
Elements of Saudi Arabia? Oh yeah.
So,
oops, that's the same one?
Yeah.
You keep opening over here.
All right. ISIS and Clinton Foundation are both funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Now, I'm not saying I know that that's true. I'm just simply saying this is Julian Assange November 4th, 2016, right before the election, being quoted as saying, ISIS and the Clinton Foundation are both funded, I would argue, by elements of Saudi Arabia and elements of Qatar. To say it's the government of each,
Right.
I'm not sure of that.
Well, it's like Al-Walid and those guys.
But this is Assange saying this. So why do we think the Clintons and the Obamas and perhaps the Bushes don't want Julian Assange talking? Because if it is true that elements of Qatar and Saudi Arabia actually were funding ISIS, they had to be doing that with the knowledge of the Barack Obama administration. And they had to be doing that likely with the knowledge specifically of Hillary Clinton. And that, if this is true, that would obviously disqualify Hillary Clinton not only from holding office, but for having any freedom. She would be a
Yes.
She and Barack Obama would be in prison for treason if this is the case. I mean, think what happened, what ISIS did, how many people were executed, how many Americans were executed, how many of our allies were executed. Think of the horrific way in which ISIS behaved. To think that under the Barack Obama administration, possibly U.S. government funds and personnel may have played a role in setting up ISIS, that would certainly undercut any argument for Hillary Clinton to be President of the United States. And it's something that absolutely would come to light in these missing emails. Because there would probably be, in these, as we've talked about before, Hillary claimed that the sum total of all of her emails was roughly 63,000. 30,000 she turned over, 33,000 she bleached bit or were personal, right? I think the real number of emails is far larger. But just based on my own personal production of emails and the fact that I'm not in charge of the Secretary, the State Department, and I'm not a politically active person trying to be President of the United States, there must be many, many more emails than she said there were.
Well, and I know you think it's slightly a joke or possibly ridiculous when I say these things, but I do think that by so heavily publicizing that it's 33,000 emails, that's a message to someone about the emails. I don't know what it means or whatever, but I think that 33 is a marker.
Could be. So if we go to the next page, after sending the first email out, Rosen responds, and then I responded 11/12 on the 25th of July with this longer thing, which I'm going to take the trouble to read. See, the MOU, I point out there are two versions, references numerous government grants. The release on 18 December compounds the problem because there were no government grants disclosed on the 990s from 1997, there isn't a 990, through 2007, or in New York State filings. I mentioned back in July 2016 that I continue to be in the process of getting this information from governments themselves. And the figures that I was able to get then, and that I certainly have now, and that Doyle and Moynihan and others have, show that governments gave a lot more, hundreds of millions of dollars more to the Clinton Foundation than shows up in the 990s. There's a big problem with that. Then the second issue is that the FDA did not approve any of these HIV/AIDS medicines that the Clintons so brag about distributing until January 2005. But Bill Clinton and his people started distributing unauthorized, unapproved generic versions of these HIV/AIDS medicines as early as 2002, well before there was any authority. But they had no legal capability to do this. And worse, we find out by May of 2013 that these drugs were adulterated. They were not checked. And Ranbaxy specifically, one of the Indian generic manufacturers, had to pay a $500 million fine, which I don't think was large enough.
You know, Charles, one thing I was a little, I don't want to say disappointed in, but kind of surprised by was that I feel like when you give these explanations, like there were moments during the testimony from Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan where I was like, say this, tell them this. And they were kind of,
right.
There seemed to be like a communication breakdown going on there. And I don't know what those two gentlemen know or what their I did get the feeling that they were very cautious, thoughtful guys who, whatever they were doing, it seemed to me they had some plan that I don't know about, so I'm not going to go and tell them what to do and criticize what they were doing. But it was interesting to be in the room and really carefully watch that. I also learned that those rooms have a press audio feed, which I will use next time. But if people can get a good quality audio feed, they should listen to the audio, The aspect of what I was doing that I found interesting is that when you watch those C-SPAN videos, it's like the close-up of the guy talking, the close-up of the response, and whatever. I was looking at, you know, Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan or Tom Fitton or whatever, when the other people were speaking, and seeing the expressions on their faces when they're sitting there listening was very telling sometimes. And it just seemed like, you know, Mark Meadows, not an attorney as far as I know, just seemed like a guy running a meeting trying to get an answer. And then Ms. Norton was conducting it almost like a prosecutor trying to trap these guys and corner them into saying certain little key things that she then wanted to reference later in a really like scumbaggery, lawyery kind of way.
Yeah, it's true. But just to continue down the category of problems, again, these are problems that I had identified by July 25th, 2016, 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, 2.5 years almost ago. So I mentioned that there's problems with the Little Rock complex, that the construction values are inflated, that I believe that the foundation and the BKD would be centrally involved in this, and their lawyers were all involved in a conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud of $38 million across state lines between 2004, 5, and 6. And that the construction fraud is about $60 million, but that the process of double entry accounting is our good friends, the accountants Bob and Kevin, and I know who they are and they know who they are, but we're not going to reveal their full names. They've dry cleaned all of this, and they can confirm that, you know, what people like me know, that when you look at a balance sheet for the period through December 31st, 2017, it rests on every preceding year. So that if there's a massive problem in 2004, 5, and 6, that problem stays in the center of the balance sheet right the way to the present. So these are problems, these specific items here, just these, gut the pretense that the Clinton Foundation is actually an organization, a charity, lawfully organized or operated. And this is something that Mueller and Comey and Rosenstein should have seen when they investigated the Clinton Foundation from 2001 to 2005. We put up before, you don't have to hit the link, but people who are new, if you hit the link under this sentence, you'll see the William J. Clinton 3-part dump. And then as to the emails, the email scandal is inseparable from the Clinton Foundation's scandal. The email scandal, the emails that Hillary and her allies sent around the world necessarily involve Clinton Foundation matters. And there must be many, many emails, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of emails scurrying around that either have Hillary's name on it or Uma Abedin or people close to the Clintons related to this Clinton Foundation, in particular covering the period when she was Secretary of State. And no doubt the reason they operated the server the way they did is they knew they had a problem, they knew they needed to control all this while she was Secretary of State, and they knew they needed to have time once she left to sift through all the emails and disappear the ones that needed to be disappeared.
Well, they just didn't want them to be FOIA-able or have anybody working for the government or security. But how could they not realize that the NSA would have all of this? Or maybe perhaps they have the NSA on their side as well?
Well, I think that, again, that Bain is a consulting firm in Boston Consulting Group, you know, and try to get real...
Mitt Romney?
Exactly, but he was Bain Capital, the investing side of it. Oh. But these fancy schmancy consulting firms, you know, they like to sell projects for, I don't know what they charge now per month in terms of consulting studies, probably $250,000 a month or $1 million a month. And one of the standard things they'd like to do is they take a 4-box diagram, right? And they have on the vertical axis, the horizontal axis, they'll have, say, high and low something and high and low something else. And it's my famous high and low intelligence, high and low arrogance. And in the Clintons you have, I think in some of the Clintons, low intelligence, high arrogance.
Yeah.
And certainly in some of the Bush administration, the Obama administration, same problem. When you allow people with high arrogance and low intelligence and no morals to sit on top of a large company or government, that's when you end up with this, the swamp. And you know, we cannot, our country, we spend $500 billion a month on government. We have a gross economic output of like 20 trillion a year. We're far bigger than China, 3 times the size of China, I would argue, on fair accounting. And we cannot let this epic experience with corruption stand in the shadows and remain unpunished. It's got to come to the fore. This is a process to show it out there. This dump here on Hillary Clinton that people were not all that aware of is 28 parts to it. 28 parts. And we've been through that in some depth.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next page.
You know, I had a similar formula when I was hiring crews in Hollywood, Charles. There were certain people who were great at their jobs, but a pain in the ass. And there were certain people who were less good than I wanted them to be, but really trying hard and polite and professional, and you could deal with that. But then there were people who were bad at their job and a pain in the ass, and those people got fired. Exactly.
So we've before put out this memo about what you need to do when you do international work, but let's hit that first link on the top. This is, bedrock IRS law, regulations, experience. This is a memo back from 1992. We're going to show you a 36-page memo with lots of details about explaining some aspects of how the traps that you have to watch for when, as a U.S. charity, you try to do international business. There's special rules, and we're not going to try to tell you everything that's in this memo now. This is something that would take, if you really read it carefully, it would probably take an hour. And if we go back into the slide, however, we've shown before, and let's not hit this one link, but this is the link to the Clinton Foundation, portions of their original application for federal tax exemption. Just take it as gospel. You can check it, but take it as gospel that their application does not ask to do anything other than operate something in Little Rock, Arkansas, and where they had a chance to say they were doing international operations, they specifically do not state they were going to do international or health or climate change. No, when they applied and received their federal tax exemption between December 23rd, 1997 and January 29th, 1998, all they were going to be was happily working away in Little Rock, Arkansas, not in New York, not in Boston, not in Europe, not in Asia, not in Africa, just in Little Rock.
When that came up in the hearing, the Congress members up there did not seem to care. They
again,
totally
they're in the tank.
nonplussed.
Yeah, they're in the tank, some of them.
So Jim Jordan was there, and he was very interested, and also I got to speak to him in the hallway afterwards.
Oh, yeah?
He's very polite, very nice guy.
Yeah. So it's my contention that by 1999, and some might argue earlier than that, but certainly by 1998, the Clinton Foundation, while Bill Clinton was president, had already failed the key organizational and operational tests. It was Humpty Dumpty, it was a 48-egg omelet, a sewage omelet, in the swamp. Country and it could not, you could not, no amount of raccoon sauce or whatever is going to make that sewage omelet.
It was raccoon meat with hot sauce.
It's just not going to work, So,
Charles, you could open an omelet station when this is all said and done, and you could offer various...
So a key point, though, that Larry Doyle and John Moynihan made, and I'm sure most people were just saying, what is he talking about? A charity cannot act as an agent for a foreign government.
Oh, yeah, right. That was a key point. And even Norton seemed sort of stumped by that.
Well, she runs a charity. See, she runs the Children's Defense Fund. That's where she met, she used to run a charity, Children's Defense Fund. And that's where she met Hillary Clinton a long time ago.
Is that Children's Defense Fund the thing? No, there's some other children's thing that was our first episode.
No, that's, Children's Investment Fund.
Children's Investment Fund.
But so this is a portion from that memo that we talked about in the very beginning that says you cannot say you're engaged in charitable activity when what you're doing is you're acting as an agent for a foreign government. Remember this whole registering to be an agent of a foreign government under FARA. I believe Doyle and Moynihan feel strongly, and their lawyers feel strongly, that the Clinton Foundation has been functioning as an unregistered foreign agent, which would have to be a broker, a for-profit company.
Yeah, a broker.
And pay corporate income taxes. Yeah. And it shouldn't have been saying to its donors, hey, you can take tax deductions. So, we're looking here at a cost to the American taxpayer, just a financial cost. Forget the cost of the reputation of our charities and of our country. we are looking here, in my judgment, just on the declared revenues, you're looking at probably $1 billion of foregone tax revenue minimum.
I think they said 400 million to 2.4 billion.
That's yeah. Basically, they were just saying the whole revenues, declared revenues, which are actually 3.2 billion, and then you take a corporate income tax rate on that, and you're talking, and then penalties and interest. You're talking about a loss to the U.S. government just on their declared revenues. But if you add on top of that the global fund, which I believe is hopelessly corrupt, and UNITAID, a whole bunch of other things around the Clinton Foundation, you start getting into more like 100 billion or more of stuff that corporate income taxes should have been assessed, or personal income taxes and interests and penalties. And then you start thinking about the private foundation donors like the Gates Foundation and 49 other U.S. ones that I've identified. All of their donations should not have been allowed. And in a case like the Gates Foundation, there is an argument that the Trump administration, the IRS, could say, thank you very much, Bill, for your monopolistic work over decades. You thought you were going to get away with it. Thanks for putting all these assets in your foundation. We're going to take that foundation. Thank you very much.
Well, that's what Norton kept turning to was, oh, well, if you're going to talk about this, what about the Trump Foundation? Her argument was that because Trump, and also Whitaker had some foundation.
Right, small.
Why do all these guys have foundations? But she was saying, these guys are still in government. Why are we worried about Hillary? Because she's not in government anymore. I didn't know that that had anything to do with whether or not somebody gets prosecuted for a crime. But Laura Butler is pointing out that Norton is one of Hillary's law professors. I think you told me that.
I don't know about law professor, but she might have been. She might have taught at Yale Law School.
Laura says Norton was one of Hillary's professors, and then Sherilyn reminds us that Sidney Blumenthal was brought up as well. So, I mean, that's a whole other aspect of this, beyond the tax evasion crimes. What about the, that's the pay-for-play aspect. Sidney Blumenthal obviously is a principal at Osprey Global that, we've got all these Blackwater and all of these why are these mercenary companies allowed to exist? Why does the Army need to outsource stuff to military companies that aren't the U.S. Army? I mean, we've heard these stories from the Moriartys about what went on in Libya. It's pure
crazy.
Terrorism.
It's crazy. So just to give, there are many, many examples. We'll just show you two. If we hit this first link here, Jason, this is a press release from the Clinton Foundation itself. Now, maybe it's full of lies. Maybe that's going to be their defense. While we did, look, they're trying to raise money on this broadcast illegally.
I knew you'd like that.
And so he hit the X.
He's like, oh, I love the children.
Yeah. And here's a press release from Dublin on September 29th, 2006, right? Where the Irish government is bragging that they're using the Clinton Foundation as an agent to provide do work for them in Lesotho and Mozambique.
Now, I never even heard of that country.
Lesotho is a tiny kingdom inside of South Africa.
Wow.
And it's a hopelessly corrupt place, very poor.
Perfect place for a Digicel mobile phone network.
Exactly. But notice this is in 2006. In 2006, the Clinton Foundation had no authority to do, as the Clinton Foundation, HIV/AIDS work anywhere, in particular internationally in these poor countries. They had not, I don't think, complied with Irish law to solicit the funds properly in Ireland that they raised from Ireland. They never documented what they did with any of this money. They never documented any related party transactions that may have happened with Iron Magaziner, who had a consulting company, has a consulting company, and may have derived compensation out of this arrangement.
But what about Donald Trump's hair, Charles?
I know, and his hands, his tiny hands.
You're going to investigate that.
Right, exactly. So, and this is, maybe this is a lie, but it's from the Clinton Foundation, and if you just scroll quickly through the page, you'll see that it goes on and on and on, bragging about the way they did this, the history under which they do this, how much money they've taken from Ireland, and characterizing their work as being an agent. So they're basically confessing to charity fraud in this press release. Thank you very much, Bill. Thanks for keeping it up there. You can't take it down at this point because we have it offline anyway.
And now it's part of this broadcast. It's interesting how they confess to these things in open court and in open documents. It just shows how brazen they are and how confident they are that nothing will happen to them.
And SpongeBob SquarePants gives it 4 stars
That
down here.
came up in the thing as well, that Charity Navigator. Like that was one of the moments where I wanted to shout out, the guy who created it came on our show and said that it's a total fraud now.
It became a fraud, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't, in the beginning it was a good idea, but the problem with these rating services is that they actually encourage donors not to do the homework that needs to be done. You should not rely on any of these rating services without doing your independent work. And in fact, that Charity Navigator's name would still be touted by the Clinton Foundation tells me that any lawsuit, any criminal action that goes against this conspiracy to commit charity fraud and then to obstruct the investigation
They'll be implicated.
definitely needs to have the people behind Charity Navigator, which is a charity, in theory, as part of
Fraud Navigator,
Exactly.
they should call it. I find all the best frauds.
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Magoo, run by Mr. Magoo.
Charles, I think it's a standard policy that when something becomes, too influential, they want to infiltrate it and take it over. So Charity Navigator, I was about to call it charity fraud, gains people's trust. They don't want to just destroy it. First, they try to destroy it. Larry Nichols has told us about a theory, a philosophy that the Clintons use called kill them while they're young, meaning when something is starting out, if it looks like it's going to be trouble, knock it out while it's weak. But if something gets big and powerful, it seems that they like to infiltrate it and try to take it over so that all the trust that people have for it can then be kind of, is it jujitsu, where you
Right.
turn your enemy's strength against them? Try to jujitsu it to their favor.
Yeah. So that's one example. And then the other example, if you go back in, is Australia. And this, in order to read the document, you have to, so don't try to do it. But here's the memorandum of understanding between the Australian government. And this is something, this guy Downer, remember Alexander Downer, who I believe trapped Papadopoulos. He signed illegally this absurd memorandum of understanding, as did Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton had no authority to sign this document. He was not an officer of any part of the Clinton Foundation at the time. The Australian government evidently either they did no due diligence, or they did enough due diligence. Here's the signatures. February 22nd, 2006 in Sydney. There you see Bill's handwriting, and here's...
What is this up arrow?
That's J.
I have a feeling a handwriting expert would tell you that the whatever flourish here on top of the J not touching the J, and also it pointing upward, demonstrates an extremely high opinion, a high self-opinion of the person writing this. Perhaps a delusionally high self-opinion.
Yeah. Well, look, on the 22nd of February 2006, there was no such thing as the William J. Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative. No such entity anywhere in the world. And here's this guy flying over to Australia.
It's lovely.
Signing, February is probably a nice time of year, in Sydney, signing this damn thing, and here's Downer signing it, and these gentlemen, there's a 10...
For the Australian government.
Right.
Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Right. This is a total fraud.
The dishonorable Alexander Downer.
And these are just 2 examples. I mean, when you put in the word MOU and Clinton Foundation or Clinton, and then you start going through all the search results, you will see that there are many, many, many MOUs signed by either Magaziner or Bill or other people, all of which are boldly fraudulent. And that a former president of the United States whose wife was just beginning an important re-election campaign in this period, 22nd February 2006, that he would be doing this, dishonoring the rest of us by going into Australia and trying to skive off money that was in theory going to come out of the Australian taxpayer to go via the Clinton Foundation non-existent HIV/AIDS initiative to Vietnam, China, and Papua New Guinea and other territories like that is just outrageous.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that in order to question Bill Clinton, you have to negotiate with David Kendall of Williams and Connolly. No, I mean, you should show up at Schoolhouse Lane in Chappaqua at 3 in the morning if he's ever there.
Bust the door in.
Bust the door down, and
Paul Manafort style.
Exactly, and let's see all these records,
Absolutely.
including passports and travel receipts and you know, what the hell has the Clinton Foundation been used for? How does all this money get spent by the Clinton Foundation on overhead? How much of it went to Bill? How much of it should have been declared as income? So if we go to the next page.
Yeah, they kind of danced over the laureate $17 million payment at that hearing.
Yeah, exactly. So this, you know, for people who, some people say that I don't care enough about Haiti, which is ridiculous, but these are just some of the either interviews or stories involving me, just a very few of them, because there are probably 4 times as many as this. But I just put some of the choice ones out from the 28th October 2015 to the 14th January 2018. This Pirates of the Caribbean, Jason, that's a show that we did. Let's look at that view count. That's a pretty interesting one.
That was actually the first film that I interviewed for in...
Really?
For first major film that I interviewed.
Look at those views.
Wow, yeah, that's high.
Right? So this...
What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I don't know, maybe people like the film.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, it's...
Well,
anyway,
classics.
So the point being is that we have cared a lot about Haiti, and we care a lot about these countries that the Clintons claim they do good work in, when in fact, you know, they're not authorized to do the work, and there's no record of actually what happened in the country. There's no record of, in the case of Haiti, billions of dollars of missing money, not so much from the Clinton Foundation, but from this Haiti Recovery Committee that Bill co-chaired with the former Prime Minister of Haiti. Mm-hmm. If we go to the next page.
It's interesting, Charles. I've found that when you speak to people from Haiti, everybody knows what went on.
Right.
Only very few people are even willing to talk about it, even just in public.
Sure. Well, so these are excerpts from the Clinton Foundation marketing blurb, right? Not the 990, but the marketing blurb. All right, and this says, immediately after January 2010 earthquake destroyed Haiti, President Clinton formed the Clinton Foundation Haiti Fund. This is in their marketing report for 2009, published in 2010. There never was anything called Clinton Foundation Haiti Fund set up anywhere inside the United States of America that I've been able to find. Maybe it was set up, you know, in some small town in some small state somewhere, you know.
Little Rock?
Maybe, but it's definitely not in Little Rock. There's no entity that I've been able to find as a charity called the Clinton Foundation Haiti Fund. President Clinton in 2009 was not an officer of the Clinton Foundation, nor was he an officer in 2010. Beginning September 29th, 2009, Bill Clinton was, around then, he was made chairman for life illegally of the Clinton Health Access Initiative, which was a supposed charity whose tax exemption came to light on March 15th, 2010. So Bill Clinton, there was no organization, and there has to be an organization in order for there to be a real charity, called the Clinton Foundation Haiti Fund. Right here it says he was on the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission along with Prime Minister Jean-Max Bellerive. That Interim Haiti Recovery Commission has refused to provide an accounting of any type for the money, the many billions that were sent towards Haiti and its beleaguered residents. Okay? Then on in the same annual report that's on, that you could see, and I give a link to it down here, more than 100,000 individuals have donated more than $16 million to the Clinton Foundation Haiti Fund. No, they haven't. There's no record of that. There is no such, in New York, if he formed this in New York State, there's no record of it, okay? And you can't go out to 100,000 individuals and collect $16 million in New York State without filing paperwork. But of course, in $16 million, that's just this one thing here is about the same size as the Trump Foundation problem in New York State. Are they going to go after this? No, it's Bill Clinton. There's no, double standard for the Clintons. We're not going to go after this. This is ripping off poor people in Haiti, black poor people in Haiti, claiming that all you raised was $16 million when they could have raised $1.6 billion and nobody would be the wiser. Then they go on to say that they also gave value to assistance in total is nearly $23 million, okay? So if you average 16 and 23, you get 39 and a half. Sorry, 20. You get 19 and a half, which is roughly almost precisely the size of the Trump Foundation problem in New York State. Nothing on this. Battle royal on the Trump Foundation.
Well, it's
nothing
also,
on this.
How long ago did this happen? And they pounced on the Trump Foundation thing right away. Why didn't
No. The Trump Foundation problem happened a while ago, but before this.
Oh.
Okay, this is a spot-on comparable. If you're going to go after the Trump Foundation, which maybe you should, you absolutely have to go after the Clinton Foundation in New York State. You cannot just do one.
Right.
It's
Which
just,
they currently are.
Which of course they're. And then you look here, when did Bill start spending Clinton Foundation money? He was not an officer in 2003 to fly to Haiti. Hit this link here. And this is really, truly disgusting for people who understand their Haiti history.
This one?
Yeah, this bottom one, yep. Bill Clinton had a lifelong friendship with this Aristide guy.
Yeah.
And Aristide is a horrible human being.
Well, he's been going to Haiti for a long time, which is strange.
But here, April 8th, 2003, here's a picture, like that look, right? Of Bill Clinton with Aristide in Haiti.
Just the super red,
yeah, and the haughty, you're not going to catch me.
Weird color suit with a red ass face.
Mustard colored suit.
That looks bad.
Yeah, looks really bad.
What's he spending all that money on? Not clothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not good. And why, oh why, it says here, held prior discussions between a delegation from the William J. Clinton Foundation about the foundation's commitment to support the Haiti government's fight against HIV/AIDS as an agent. The Clinton Foundation was not authorized in 2003 for this work. If any money was spent on this trip by the Clinton Foundation, that's a gross abuse of the charity law. And here you have documentary evidence of him being in Haiti in 2003, ostensibly doing international work on behalf of the Clinton Foundation that was neither authorized in the Articles of Incorporation nor validly authorized as being tax exempt by the IRS.
What are they talking about here? The comedians?
That's a separate thing. So if we go back into the slide there, it really, if there are any investigative journalists left at the Washington Post or the New York Times, why don't you answer the question of what actually happened to the billions of dollars raised for disaster-prone Haiti? Why don't you answer that question? That's a real question. You say, these mainstream journalists say that they're all, all in for trying to help the disadvantaged, the economically and otherwise disadvantaged people around the world. There is no poorer country in our hemisphere than Haiti.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is the poorest country. The people there they cannot catch a break. I said on an Irish broadcast on Friday night that the people of Haiti are probably even more unlucky than the people of Ireland. For Christ's sake, I mean, it would seem to me that if we're going to engage in providing foreign aid to any country, anywhere, we should do right by the people of Haiti. We really should. And we should get to the bottom of what happened to this money. And if the Clintons have stolen this money, it's parked offshore somewhere, or they've used it for political purposes or lifestyle, whatever, they need to go to prison for the rest of their lives.
I think part of the problem is, and we're seeing a little bit of this in the comments right here, America Dad is saying that he's upset that people aren't talking about the weapons stolen from the CIA compound in Benghazi. That's not really what this particular episode is about, and I don't know if you have any knowledge about that. That's more of maybe a Chris Peranto question, but it seems like this Clinton Foundation is kind of like the fund,
sure,
the bank for these black operations that they're running through corporations like Blackwater, like Osprey Digital, or Osprey Global, all these things that they're going around the world executing their own version of foreign policy to achieve these goals that require billions of dollars to fund.
Exactly. So, perfect segue. So I had remembered this email. Okay, this is an email from January 19th, 2010. It comes out of the Hillary Clinton State Department emails and WikiLeaks, and there's a link to the actual email. Don't hit this link, but if you want to see the actual email, it's there. And this is from hrod17@clintonemail.com. And I've got to believe there are many email addresses that we don't yet have.
H-Rod 1 through 16?
Right, well, others. And it says, I hope you're well, this is to Cheryl Mills. The subject line is, hope you're well wherever you get this. Below our ideas array, education core for Haiti that you asked for. Hillary's response at 7:23 in the morning on January 19th, 2010. Great ideas, in parentheses, no surprise. Let's work towards solid proposal made to Red Cross and Clinton Foundation since they have unencumbered dollars. Bullshit. The Clinton Foundation certainly has no dollars that are unencumbered.
What does that mean, unencumbered dollars?
They have money that they can do whatever they want with it. That is not true.
No charity should.
No, absolutely no charity has unencumbered dollars. Charities have to devote their assets to the specific authorized purposes set forth in their articles of incorporation as approved by the IRS. And so this foundation, this is part and parcel, an explanation of why I'm so exercised about this Clinton Foundation. They regarded this thing as a grab bag.
So who wrote that?
Hillary is Hillary's. Let's work towards a solid proposal made to Red Cross and Clinton Foundation since they have unencumbered dollars. They, the Clinton Foundation. All right, there's a memorandum of understanding that's supposedly regulating relations between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. And here's one incriminating email. How come Robert Mueller isn't, putting Hillary Clinton on the rack, and asking her, what did you mean by unencumbered dollars? How many times have you used unencumbered dollars? What percentage of the Clinton Foundation spending was with, quote, unencumbered dollars? How did the dollars become unencumbered? By what legal means, legal expert?
I'm sad she didn't use the bag of cash emoji right there.
Right, exactly.
That would have been better.
Yeah. And so this is from that same piece that we referenced before, but it explains that a charity, a U.S. charity, the Clinton Foundation, operating, let's say, in Haiti, has to tightly control its operations from a U.S. base, and it has to actually be an organization. There was no organization that could do anything in Haiti, and yet here's the Secretary of State interacting with Cheryl Mills, whose common law husband was a beneficiary of State Department grants.
Who is her common law husband?
Pete Domenici's son.
I don't know.
Pete Domenici is, I think, the former New Mexico senator, and he ran at least several organizations. One of them called the C Forever Foundation, that was a beneficiary of money and doing work in Haiti, and I think Mills was on the board of that foundation as well, without disclosing it.
C Forever Foundation.
C as in C, and then forever.
Do they help blind people?
No, I don't. They probably help themselves.
Huh.
So, this to me is the disconnect here between the rules and regulations and revenue rulings. That's what rev rule means, revenue ruling. I mean, it's bright line law here that this Clinton Foundation had no authority to do international work, and certainly no authority to go around the world and say, we have unencumbered money, we do what we want.
That's crazy.
Right? So if we go to page 12.
Unencumbered dollars, Charles.
Okay, so this is something I think we discussed before, but I want to discuss it in context. This is something that went into the file on my ex-wife's 60th birthday on the 3rd of October 2016 at 6:59 p.m. So just putting this in the record because of the optics of the case, okay? I encountered approximately / at least 340,000 emails stored on the Wiener computer. A significant number of these 340,000 emails appeared to be between Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton, the latter who appears to have used a number of different email addresses. Okay, this becomes known to the system, the FBI system, on the 3rd of October 2016, over a month before the election.
Who's the author of that?
Unknown. Unknown person. Okay? This is based upon a review of the header information. I did not review the content of these emails, as the warrant only authorized me to view terms that would give me probable cause to believe that...
Oh, it's NYPD.
Right. Well, SDNY, actually. Southern District of New York, search warrant. But the point here is, with Manafort, with Corsi, right, the approach they take is, once they get into your house, they look at everything.
Yeah.
And they take the investigation everywhere. But with this one, They find a laptop on the 3rd of October 2016. Do they immediately make an issue of it? No, they sit on this. Right? It takes until October 27th, 2016 for them to reopen the case. They sit on the fact that they found, by one estimate, 340,000 emails stored on the computer. A lot of these were between Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton. Okay, if a lot of these emails were between Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton, this is many times, yeah, exactly, many times the 33,000 emails that are missing, or the 30,000 that were turned over.
Right.
And James Comey was head of the FBI at this point.
Why have we still not heard anything about
Well, it gets worse. It gets worse. Okay, so then it says, in an abundance, they take a really cautious view. Even if there's a third party on those emails, I will not review their content out of an abundance of caution. Obviously, I will not review any emails to which Anthony Weiner is not a party, such as emails between Ms. Abedin and Ms. Clinton. I mean,
why?
If I saw this as the head of, a team person on the FBI, I'd say, wait a minute, these emails that Hillary Clinton only turned over in December of 2014, reluctantly, fighting subpoena, fighting this, fighting that. Now we've got a treasure trove of 340,000 emails, and I've got somebody on the team who could review them saying, I'm not going to do that. Wouldn't want to do that. Right.
But wait a minute. Why? What's the abundance of caution? Why is this person?
All right. So ordinarily, I believe the abundance of caution is the following: that if you're swearing out a warrant,
validate that evidence.
If you're swearing out a warrant that says, I have probable cause to believe that this Anthony Weiner engaged in the crime of having child pornography on a computer, and you get a warrant to search that computer for that crime, it's limited. The warrant is limited.
If you find something else, you can't now go start another investigation.
Right. Well, I don't know if you can't start another investigation, but you've got to limit, when you take possession of this property in pursuit of a crime, you've got to stay focused on that crime.
But why though? I thought, if the police pull you over and smell alcohol on your breath, that's probable cause to search your car or whatever. And then if they find a gun, they charge you with having a gun. So why, if you're searching somebody's computer for child pornography and you find out that they're planning wars around the world and stealing money, can't you investigate?
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just saying, I'm only putting this up here to highlight the contrast. On the one hand, we have the approach taken with Corsi and Manafort and whatever, where it's like, we get everything, we accuse you of whatever we want, make stuff up, throw you in the slammer, raid your house or whatever. Yeah. On the other hand, they finally do get this computer, they see 340,000 emails, and nobody says, no, wait a minute, all Hillary turned over was 30,000, and now we've got a significant number, which I read that to be half, let's say, so 170,000 emails. Even if it's only 60,000 emails, that's twice as many as she turned over. Yeah. And I would have thought you'd go full bore and figure what the hell is going on here. Well, as recently as August 2018, here we have the liar, the leaking liar, Comey, telling Congress, thanks to the wizardry of our technology, the FBI was able to eliminate the vast majority of messages as duplicates of emails they'd previously seen. Tireless agency claimed, then worked night after night after night to scrutinize the remaining material. But virtually none of his account was true. Only 3,077 of now it's up to 694,000 emails. Only 3,077 of 694,000 emails which came into the possession of the FBI and their technicians were actually reviewed. That's outrageous. On that count alone, I would say, Mr. Mueller, no more work. You've erased 19,000 struck and page text. Stop your work. Stop your pencils down. This is it. And I certainly hope that this judge, Emmett Smith, Sullivan rather.
He's good.
Emmett Smith is, I guess, the football player.
I don't know.
Whatever. Sullivan, that he looks at all this and says, enough.
Now, here's a question that I think you don't know the answer to. We need to ask a lawyer or someone who is knowing the D.C. swamp. But last night, Larry Klayman told me that Emmett Sullivan is, obviously he's the judge presiding over this Robert Mueller, sentencing of General Flynn, but he's also the judge presiding over Larry's FOIA lawsuit against Mueller. So I just wonder, in this process of, Larry said that this particular judge drew this case. So I wonder, is it a random drawing of who presides over what? Or is there someone making these decisions, and is there some ability to influence, like, oh, here's another Mueller thing, send it to Sullivan? Because I think, when you think about the context, Judge Sullivan knows that Robert Mueller has been leaking from the FOIA case that Larry has brought. And he knows that the special counsel's office has been not forthcoming with the evidence that his court is demanding. He's got to be running out of patience. I've, through my own personal experience, realized that if you piss off a judge, your lawsuit doesn't necessarily go that well.
Exactly. Not a strong move.
No.
So if we go to the final page of this presentation.
Wow, this one's been flying by, Charles.
This is a little wonky, but I wanted people to understand some facts here. So what this is a certain balance sheet information for this entity, Chai, which was called, at that time, there were two Chais. There was one called Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative.
Not the T.
Not the T, and not kombucha either. And then there was another one, Clinton Health Access Initiative, right?
And you know what? That was cause of confusion even within the hearing.
Right, right. So the Clinton Health Access Initiative created financial statements. BKD issued them for the period 2010. And financial statements, as we've explained to people, consist of a balance sheet called Statement of Financial Position. That's like saying, what are you worth on a given day? What is this company worth in a given day? What are its assets? What are its liabilities? The difference is what it's worth. Then you have an income statement for a year where it's, what did I make this year and what did I spend, right? And that's called a statement of activities. And then you have something called a cash flow statement. Now, the Clinton Health Access Initiative did in fact produce a cash flow statement for 2010. People like me and like the accountants we know, anybody who understands basic accounting, can take the balance sheet as of December 31st, 2010, the cash flow statement for 2010, and the statement of activities for 2010,
and do a little math.
And do simple addition and subtraction, and you arrive, this is what the balance sheet was on December 31st, 2009, according to the BKD work that was delivered on the 31st of August, 2011. Basically, they argue that there's no cash at the beginning of the year, that there are these assets tied up on December 31st, 2009, $67,568,843, assets limited as to use. Now, I have, as I said before, until encountering this project, I've never seen the entry assets limited as to use, which more properly should be assets illegally used for a purpose the foundation was not yet authorized to pursue, would be another way of treating that same thing. And 67.6 million is a hell of a lot, high percentage of the 76.2 million of total assets. So it's very material in any analysis. Why in the hell did they have 67.6 million of assets limited as to use on December 31st, 2009, okay? And then you see this item, deferred revenue.
Why does it look so similar here?
It's the same number, I'll get to that in a second. And then they construct this so that the liabilities cancel out the assets, and there's no net worth, they say. So basically there's nothing there. It's a small company, but it has no net worth. Just don't even look at it. Don't waste your time on it.
Nothing to see here.
And they, on purpose, don't produce this balance sheet, which I produced, right? They should have produced this balance sheet. Then on the parent company foundation for 2009, there's a financial statement, set of financial statements issued on the 10th of November 2010. And there are two missing pages in the versions on the Clinton Foundation, but we found them in New York State and elsewhere, which give you the actual balance sheet entries for the important components of the Clinton Foundation, the largest of which was this thing called Chai. And this is a declaration made by BKD and the Clinton Foundation on the 10th of November 2010, so just after the election, the midterm election of 2010. And this shows that Chai had 16.9 million or 17 million of cash. What happened to that cash? That cash be stolen. Exactly. That cash got stolen. It disappears. And the net worth disappears. I mean, they had a net worth of 14.6 million, but they say, we'll just zero that out. Okay?
Well,
so these are highly material differences, and in particular, these transactions, these assets limited as to use, this is money from UNITAID, which was sent, principally from UNITAID, that was sent from the Swiss-based foundation or non-governmental organization to either directly to a Boston office of the Clinton Foundation that was illegally operating in Massachusetts, or to international satellites of that entity, in gross violation of a raft of laws, of solicitation laws, of operating laws. They managed to scare up, or they declared that they had 67.6 million of money. These are, advances from UNITAID for future work. But at the time they collect this money, the Clinton Foundation and Chai are not authorized for this work. So they're confessing here to charity fraud in the amount of 67.6 million. And by redoing the accounts over the course of 294 days, so between the 10th of November 2010 and the 31st of August 2011, these accounts were for the parent company, these accounts were for Chai. Both sets of accounts were done by the famous accounting firm BKD. And this is just prima facie evidence to me of fraud. And it infects, these set of transactions infect all subsequent work. The Foundation's 990s that were filed, the parent company 990s that were filed on November 16th, 2015, depend on this December 31st, 2009 balance sheet. So that to the extent that this stuff is correct, my analysis is correct, that there was a fraud on that date, that means that the Clinton Foundation's amended and restated tax returns that were filed on November 16th, 2015 for 2010 are fraudulent, and that BKD has been complicit all the while in this work. They had a chance to correct this when they filed the returns in November 16th, 2015. They have had a chance ever since to fess up, confess to these frauds, but no, they're covering for the Clintons because they're deeply stuck in. So what we were trying to do today is to give you some of the high points of this, or low points of this scandal. We've been at this now. This is, I think, did we say it's the 127th show?
something like that.
So there are quite a few shows here. There's a lot of detail. We're getting close to the point where we need, this is the 127th, where we're going to need to summarize this in an executive summary, a textual thing. But I wanted to wait and see which way the hearing went. I want to see whether we get a second special counsel, which is something I think we need and deserve. And I would point out that the Clinton Foundation and its various entities right now is putting the finishing touches on work that will be given to accountants for the 2018 year end, which comes in several days now. So every accounting firm in the world is on notice hereby by these broadcasts that this is a flaming fraud. And no accounting firm that intends to remain in business should dare to take the assignment going forward of issuing more financial statements as an audit without understanding that the only way they could do that would be to say, we can't audit this. We're not going to give you a clean opinion.
Well, the Corps de Comp would call it a fraud flambé.
Ooh,
These
now
guys,
you're showing off.
These guys could prepare the recipe a little bit differently for the flaming version. Charles, there are people who throughout, a couple things. First of all, this has been a bit of a monumental broadcast for us because we, a while ago, earlier today, achieved more than 2,000 viewers who have been with us throughout the live broadcast. So thanks to everyone who's watching on YouTube and, of course, the Jason Goodman channel, Crowdsource The Truth 2, where people can choose to use Super Chat if they like. We've got people watching on Periscope. We've got people watching on DLive. We've got people watching on VK.com, Twitch, all these different platforms. We've just added Subscribestar, and there's limited capability on Subscribestar. People can become sponsors of the show by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Of course, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And people can also send one-time sponsorship payments to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. I will be emailing the screensaver to our PayPal sponsors later today. But people have been asking throughout the broadcast in the comments why you were not there at the hearing. But of course, Mark Meadows, they spoke about it at the hearing, contacted those guys. That was one of the greatest moments of the thing when John Moynihan, Mark Meadows got upset that Doyle and Moynihan didn't want to give over the evidence, and John Moynihan just said to him, "You invited us. I didn't want to come here."
Right.
And it was just like, wow, this guy is tougher than he looks.
He is tougher than he looks, and I think the Democrats are getting far ahead of themselves. The Senate will be controlled by Republicans, specifically the Judiciary Committee, likely by Lindsey Graham, who has been one of the strongest proponents for the second special prosecutor. He is a lawyer, and he's actually
Lindsey Graham is a lawyer?
Yeah, he's been in the reserves, I think, as a judge advocate lawyer or some kind of thing. But I think he's also a lawyer, and he gets, I believe, he would understand the significance of this fraud. And it's certainly Chuck Grassley knows all about it. And these emails that we've been talking about, the missing emails, many of them have Abedin's name on it. And we must remember that Grassley specifically was interested in why Abedin was working for 4 people as a special government employee, why she was working for the Clinton Foundation, the Clintons personally, State Department, and Teneo.
Well, he left out the Saudi Arabian intelligence service. But
now, one of the things, Jason, we did have some, I think 3 just in.
That's what I was looking for right now. I think where did I put those? I think I got one of them over here. Yes. We're very interested in what's going on in France, Charles.
Yeah. I mean, the situation we have, Fabien, of course, does not live in France at the moment. He has an apartment there that's under construction. He lives in Japan, but he has family, extensive family in France, and the situation continues to be highly unstable in France and in neighboring nations.
There's very little information about this in the mainstream news. It's all, anti-Trump, anti-Corsi,
Right.
Well, I guess they like Michael Cohen now that he's...
Right.
That was another thing I wanted to bring up that I thought, whoa, wow, this is... I don't know what that says, but...
This is, I think, that's the RT person, editor of RT, I believe.
She got punched?
Is that her? Did she get punched? That's interesting.
Well, it looks like it, right? What is all this?
Yeah.
It's written in Russian.
Well, you speak Russian, right?
Well, that's the rumor. I know a phrase or two, but I certainly can't read it, and I don't speak it. I know how to say, I know one rude phrase, and I know how to say, are you sleeping? Can you hear me? Things like that. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what's going to go on in France. People have been calling for the resignation of Macron. And he's a little cookie.
His popularity, I think, is even lower than Congress at this point.
Congress is not very popular, Charles.
But look, this Zero Hedge thing has 295,000 views.
Wow.
That's
yeah,
quite
that's
significant.
a lot. I mean, people are interested for sure. Nobody, and I mean, they're lying to us about it, of course, saying that this is another, is there gas tax or whatever they were saying. But this seems to be the rejection of globalism, wouldn't you say?
Exactly, for good reason. Corrupt globalism. Corrupt, unregulated globalism.
Right, and then they had that mass shooting that took place, which was, I guess, how they intended to distract everybody. And then the other item that you had brought to my attention, of course, was this American Thinker piece.
Yeah, this is, Thomas Lifson is the guy who I think owns and runs the American Thinker. He's a very smart guy. And he and others are making this point that perhaps we're going to have some big news on Tuesday. It'll be interesting if Sullivan's conclusion through all this is, you know what? I'm throwing this case out.
Well, I think Sullivan has got Robert Mueller's number in that, Larry Klayman of FreedomWatchUSA.org has brought it to Judge Emmett Sullivan's attention that there's been rampant, they call it leaking to the press, but I say it's collusion between the press and the Department of Justice to convince the public, which these lawyers, these prosecutors, the judges, even the members of Congress are also members of the public. They see the news, and if a story goes everywhere when they go to Thanksgiving dinner and they go out to dinner with their friends and they're sitting around the coffee machine talking, this is what everybody's talking about. These guys construct reality by publishing these bizarre stories, and our friend Shane Harris was in these FOIA documents contacting Peter Carr, setting up a meeting for Peter Carr to come in and meet with the Wall Street Journal's Russia team, which we know were concocting a fake, false story about Peter W. Smith working with Russian state hackers, which his emails to you basically, he posthumously totally contradicts the lies of Shane Harris. Right. And when I called Shane to discuss the matter of possible misreporting, he hung up the phone immediately because he knows that I know he's lying.
Right, exactly. Well, this is an important story and an important thing to watch in the coming week. I think I also sent you one more funny one to end on a lighter note about rap music.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. Was that about the banning of rap music in Russia?
It was. Oh, and also I sent you this thing. This is, talk about a setup. At the holiday season, Hillary Clinton spontaneously decides to write a letter to a poor little 8-year-old girl who ran for a class president against a boy and lost. Isn't that tender, sweet?
I think that we should also remember that when a 12-year-old girl was raped, Hillary Clinton didn't write her a letter. She manipulated evidence and utilized a known polygraph test in which the subject of the test lied. So I don't know if Hillary is so sympathetic to young girls.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And then where was the final one? Oh, yes, right, the rap music. Actually, I found this pretty serious because although Putin is frequently saying things that make a lot of sense with regard to invading countries in the Middle East and lying about the formation of terrorist organizations, I don't think taking charge of rap music is something that a government should do. I think rap music should be able to do whatever it wants. But it's interesting because actually we see now what Putin has in common with Tim Cook.
Right.
It's a sin to allow whatever it is that you don't like to go around.
Well, yeah, I just have to say that I don't mind some of the what it sounds like, but the lyrics of a lot of the rap music are incendiary lyrics.
Yes.
Kill the police.
But look, that's like saying, oh, there's incendiary literature, so I don't like literature.
I'm not saying ban it. I'm just saying it is. What I'm saying more is for the people who are making tremendous amount of money out there in entertainment land, glorifying violence in action thrillers, glorifying violence in video games, encouraging violence in rap music, and then to turn around and try to act that you're purer than the driven snow when you round on, say, Trump for paying off one of these people he had an affair with or whatever. It's just the contrast is so disgusting to me. It's just
the hypocrisy is ridiculous. And like you said, they're going to ban. Like Tim Cook says, it's a sin to not speak out against hate speech. Patreon has banned Sargon of Akkad for using the N-word. Now, does Apple iTunes sell Sopranos or name some movie or anything where that word is used, and why is it okay for them to use it? I'm not condoning the use of that word, although plenty of rap music does. Is Patreon going to ban anyone who says that word anywhere, even if it's not on Patreon?
It's ridiculous.
It seems like a really serious overreach, and I've met Jack Conte of Patreon, and I do want to discuss this with him when the moment is appropriate and I can, get some face-to-face time with him, because this is a serious thing. I don't think we want to be able to have some arbitrary body decide what is okay to say and what is not okay to say. We either support freedom of speech or we don't.
Right.
And I mean, I think that these individuals, look, people will say that I'm blocking people when they say, you know, Jason is a this or that. And perhaps that's the same, but you know, these ideas should be allowed to rise or fall in the market of good ideas. And my concern is that if Patreon does stuff like this and people are leaving Patreon as they have been this month, it's not my fault this guy used the N-word and Patreon kicked him out, but yet it's impacting my business here. So I'm hopeful that subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth can get all of its technical things worked out in time for people to subscribe there, because we need that competition. This is the problem. When Google controls YouTube, they can kick off whoever they want. When Al-Walid bin Talal, I mean Jack Dorsey, I mean Twitter, controls that, they can kick off Laura Loomer while leaving Farrakhan, and I think ISIS has a Twitter handle, and
really?
Laura Loomer doesn't. Certainly CARE does, certainly Linda Sarsour does, certainly people who are openly advocating for Sharia law, which encourages the abuse of women and you know, making it illegal to be gay and all this kind of stuff. They're allowed to have their freedom of speech on Twitter. Why isn't Laura?
Yeah,
why isn't Sargon of Akkad?
I think that's a topic that is going to get addressed in the Senate anyway. I know that Josh Hawley, the incoming Missouri former AG and about to be junior senator, is all over this issue. And there's special tweaks to the laws being proposed, I think, to deal with this.
Carl Benjamin, that's Sargon of Akkad's real name, and people are saying that he terrifies the UK political elite. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. Well, Charles, thank you for another excellent presentation. Even with all of my running off at the mouth, we've come in at just 2 hours. So
that's right.
Very good.
Unless, you know, obviously I know my ex-wife better than anyone on the broadcast, and she would have wanted this show to go on. She very much always would say when adversity came, and she was chairman of a theater company up in upstate New York, and she'd always say the show must go on, and so it did.
And a lot of people in the comments, and I, Charles, are very sorry for your loss, and
thank you.
And sorry to hear that news about Clarissa. So I will see you on Wednesday, Charles, when we continue closing in.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Oh, wait. There's a special broadcast tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Wow.
John Cullen will be joining me. Explosive new evidence in the Las Vegas shooting. The police, Las Vegas Metro PD, have released new body camera footage. John has done an extensive review of that. And there are a lot of people who I'm now seeing, we're almost on like version 2.0 of the independent investigation of Las Vegas. Because, you know, Laura and I and some of the people that were there early on have kind of moved to other things, and people that were watching our early investigation have now been digging into some of the new evidence that's coming out, and it's getting my attention back on it. There's some interesting things, so we'll be looking at that tonight at 8. See everybody then.